So basically, a couple of people have emailed me, and I guess they were too embarrassed to leave comments, but they brought up a couple of questions about stanza five, and I want to explain them here. But I want to also mention that grammar is really complicated, as a lot of people know, but it also happens to be really boring for a lot of people. And since my goal was not to teach you grammar, I only wanted to go over the poem. I didn't delve that deep into the grammar and why and how some of the decisions were made. That was unnecessary because as long as I got the point across of how everything was interacting, that is really all you need to know, unless you wanted to take it deeper to find out the true meaning. I didn't get really technical with you and explain the how or the why. And I tried to simplify things. So there is other terminology that I could have used to explain it. But in order for me to do that, it would have just further complicated it for you. And this is a perfect stanza to give you an example of that. Right? So let's break this sentence down that's in stanza five, just to kind of explain it deeper. And this time I am going to get a little bit more technical. Hopefully it doesn't confuse you even more. But honestly, this is not really important because like I said, the point in my video and the breakdown should be good enough for you to understand the context. You know, this sentence just right off the top of your head is pretty obvious what it's saying. He's telling you that the answers I already know and that he's giving you the two answers. But if you really wanted to break it down into grammar, you'll notice that in that video, for example, I is the subject here, okay? And of course, the verb is know. We have an adverb already. And already, of course, is an adverb, and it's modifying know, telling us that we already basically know it. Right? So that means that this is a clause by itself up here. This is an independent clause. I could come out to you and say that the answers I already know, and then I'm going to, of course, give you the answers. Well, I don't really have to get into these two independent clauses. Some people might say that, well, isn't the subject answers? And the truth of the matter is, yeah, it is the subject, all right? But it doesn't really matter in the context that I explained it to you because he's pretty much telling you what he already knows, right? I already know. Well, the answers don't know. I is the person doing the verb, right? I knows, not the answers know. So technically the answers are sort of working like an object to know, telling us what do you know, okay? I already know. I already know what? Well, I know the answers. So that's kind of the way I put it up to you, that is essentially working as a direct object. This is a poem, remember. So he wrote it such that it kind of has a melody to it. It's a poem, right? It's not a technical document, but basically it's just common sense that the answers themselves don't know. They're not the ones doing anything here. I is the one that knows. And what does he know? He knows the answers. To go into the grammar, technically, you could still say that the answers are the subject. And I'm going to explain why right now. And this is the kind of stuff, again, that I did not want to get into in that video. That can be used as a relative pronoun, and relative pronouns can begin a clause, and it would be called the that clause, right? Now, it's important to know that sometimes the word that can be eliminated, right? If he wanted to write this as a technical document, he would probably say the answer's that I already know. But you can eliminate the word that's common. A lot of people eliminate that. It's assumed. The answers, what answers? Well, the answers that I already know. So technically, you could say that the answers is the subject. But now that doesn't make sense, like I just said, because the answers are not doing the knowing. Well, if you had the that here that you can't see, that, a relative pronoun, will make this a relative clause, okay? And what it is doing, essentially, is it's telling us more information about the answers. The answers, which answers? Well, the answers that I already know. So it's functioning as an adjective, modifying answers. But if I did that, it would clearly be a fragment, but you don't see a subordinating conjunction here. So how can that be a dependent clause, which of course would require a comma after it, which is exactly what Forrest Fenn did? Well, it's not. What it really is an introductory clause. And within the context of the poem, you know that because he just got done asking you a rhetorical question. He wasn't expecting an answer to, so why is it that I must go and leave my trove for all to seek? He's giving you an introductory clause. He's saying the answers, right? So which answers? The answers that I already know. So technically, this is a clause. Like I said, its only purpose is to specify more information about the answers, right? I didn't want to explain it that way because it's just going to further complicate it. I can explain it better if I tell you the logic behind it is that who's doing the knowing? I am doing the knowing, right? So you can think of the answers as kind of a filler holding the place of a direct object, which really the direct object's going to be this. What these are the answers. I have done it tired, and now I am weak. Those are two independent clauses, okay? So this independent clause and this is an independent clause. They stand on their own. I could say them and they would be complete sentences. I could say, now I'm weak. That's complete in meaning, right? I can also say, I have done it tired, right? So who's the subject here? It's I. Who's the one that have done? I have done it, right? What did he do? He did it. So it is a direct object. And then tired is telling us how he did it. Okay. So it's working as an adjective or a compliment. How did I do it? I did it tired. Okay. That's very straightforward. Now the reason why it has a comma and a conjunction end is because that is how you join these two independent clauses. Okay. That is grammatically correct. Now, of course, is an adverb and it's modifying and, right? So when did I do it? I did it now, and now I am weak. So again, here I is a subject, and weak is a subject complement. It's working as an adjective. It's modifying the subject I. Remember, I said you could essentially replace these two be verbs with an equal sign in your mind. I equal weak. Okay. This is not an object because the only things that can have objects are action verbs, right? Am is not, you can't am something, right? So am is like a stative verb. It's telling you the state of I, essentially, in this case. So weak is being used as a complement, right? I tried to use layman's words. I didn't want to get into this, all right? So, but if you want it to be technical, that's what this is up here. This is a introductory clause, and that's why it has a comma at the end. So it is a dependent clause. Technically, this is not an independent clause. Okay, this is an independent clause, but it's a that clause. You just don't see the word that here, and that's normal to leave that relative pronoun that out in some cases. What this independent clause is doing is it's providing more information to specify more about the answers. What answers? If I didn't have this here, right, and I just said the answers, I've done it tired, now I'm weak. It's still an introductory, right, but it doesn't really make sense. It leaves you wondering what the heck is the author talking about. So the way he wrote it poetically is the answers I already know. But syntax wise, the way it really works is he's telling you he already knows the answers. Now, because it's a poem again and it's not, a technical document, he left the word that out. That, like I said, that's common. But what it is just providing more information. But and this is important. This information is there. It's defining. It's a defining clause. You can't eliminate the clause itself because then you wouldn't know what answers he's talking about. And what answers? Well, the ones that I already know. If it is optional, for example, let's say I said the casino that is really beautiful is down the street. So I could say the casino is down the street, but I would have to put commas around that is really beautiful because it's a non-essential clause. It's telling me more information about the casino, but it's not essential. Let me show you what I mean. Let's come up with an example sentence here that I just said, right? Okay, so there's the complete sentence. All right. Now you can spot the that clause right off the bat. You can see it there if you know what you're doing and you understand proper grammar. This, okay, is telling us more information about the casino. Okay, clearly, which casino? The casino that is beautiful, right? But in this case, this is optional information. I could just say the casino is down the street. I'm just adding more information. So the proper way to do that grammatically would be to set it off with commas surrounding the optional clause that is formed by the relative pronoun that, right? Because you can eliminate this from the sentence and it still makes sense. The casino is down the street. I'm just providing optional information here, okay, that is telling you more about the casino, but it's unnecessary. Now, up here, it's not, all right? He's telling us, I already know. That's an important part contextually in the poem, okay, because he's referring to the past. Here are the answers to the questions that we already had above, basically, is what he's saying. But again, I just want to put this out there really quick. I hope that that answers your question. But I didn't want to delve into it that deep. That's why I kind of just glossed over some things and said, well, this is working as a compliment. Okay. This is working at that. They have technical names for all of this stuff. Okay. For example, weak would be called here a predicate adjective. But then you're going to say, well, what is a predicate? Well, predicate is anything from the verb onward in a sentence. Okay. So you have the subject and predicate. That's a sentence. But I didn't want to have to use terminology like that because it would leave people wondering what the heck I was talking about. So I tried to simplify things. And to simplify it, I would just say, well, it's an adjective because that's what it's functioning as. The important thing was that I told you it's there to tell you the state that the subject is in. I am weak. I equal weak. That is the important part. I don't need to sit there and say, well, it's a predicate adjective. Of course it is, but I'm not going to use that kind of terms because people don't understand what I'm talking about. All right. And I just got done explaining clauses, and I didn't tell you what an introductory clause is. I didn't want to have to get into that. It's not necessary. All right. I can just tell you that there was a clause up here, and this comma is proper because it was needed after this independent clause. But it's an introductory clause. He's opening it up, saying, "These are the answers that I already know." Okay. And now notice how I just said that the answers that I already know. Again, the that is a tricky thing in grammar because sometimes it's there and you don't see it. All right. And that's why you break things down grammatically. Okay. So you're looking at I and you're saying I is the one doing the knowing. That is correct. We know that this is an independent clause. So that leaves the question, well, what is answers? Well, the answers are what he already knows, right? It's pretty straightforward. There's no way that you could really screw that up. But grammatically, like I said, the word that would be used as a relative pronoun to set off a dependent clause. And that sort of leaves the answers dangling because there's no subordinating conjunction here. Well, the only time that you would have that condition is if you had an introductory sentence. Like I said right off the top, nobody's going to argue with me that I've done it tired and now I'm weak, or the answers he's providing. I mean, that's obvious, right? You don't really need to look at that any deeper than that, all right? And like I said, but if you really, really want to get technical, you can explain it like that. And in order for me to kind of quote unquote back up everything that I said, I would have to get really technical with you and explain why I made certain choices. I chose not to do that because I don't want to complicate this any more than it needed to be. The important thing is that you knew how everything was interacting. So yeah, both of these were pretty clear too. I didn't need to explain them. Who I have done, who done it? I. So I is the subject. What did he do? He did it. How did he do it? He did it tired. Okay. Tired is an adjective. Tired is providing more information about how I did it. I did it tired. Straightforward. I don't really need to get into technical terminologies, but I did have to tell you that it is a direct object, right? I mean, because what did he do? You have an action verb here. Done, right? What have you done? I done it. Obvious. We don't really need to analyze it anymore beyond that point, you know. But the whole idea is that in order for you to go to a dictionary, you have to know how each word is functioning. Okay, because in this case, yeah, tired and weak are both adjectives, but there's a lot of words that can be an adjective, a noun, and an adverb, you know, and the way it's determined is not by the word itself, and certainly you don't guess. It's based on where the word is. For example, adjectives that are defining attributes, such as the color, the size, and so on and so forth. In English language, they always appear before the noun that they're modifying. Okay. So if you said a black cat, that's correct. You wouldn't say a cat black, then it will be what they call a predicate adjective. Okay. It's a certain type of adjective. And that's the way you would use it with a to be verb, for example, is Troy is cool, right? So there, cool is what they call a predicate adjective. It's not telling you an attribute about an object, it's telling you more information about the subject. So that, you know, but I really didn't want to get into, like I said in the beginning when I showed you all the parts of speech, I didn't want to have to get into, you know, well, there's different adjective types. Because if you really want to get technical, you know how you have different attributes like size. It was big, small, you know, or long, short. So there's sizes, there's colors, there's texture, there's all different kinds of things that adjectives can describe. And I don't know whether you're aware of this or not, but grammar defines the rules or the order in which they should appear. In other words, it's proper to say, for example, let's say the large black cat, but it's not proper to say the black large cat. Now, technically, they're both adjectives, all right, but you're not supposed to do it that way. You would have to you have to mention the size before you mention the color. But I don't, you know, it's pointless to get into that stuff because there's no case where Forrest Fenn took advantage of that. But my point is that the placement of a word dictates its role. Okay. So when you look things up in the dictionary, you have to know what role it's playing. That's why it was the most important thing that I told you the role that the phrase or the word or the clause has within that sentence. I didn't want to have to go into a deep analysis like this because I would have put you to sleep and it would have probably taken 10 hours to make the video. But, you know, I'm kind of, you know, it's interesting. Like I said, I hated in school English. I quit high school during English class, right? I knew how to read. I'm not illiterate, but I didn't feel that it was important that I understood grammar at that low of a level. But the problem is because of the fact that I never was formally educated on it, like a lot of people who slept through English, even if they didn't quit school, you know, let's look at, and I don't want to mention his name, but you know who I'm talking about. He told me that he went to college for English and he pretty much slept through it. You know, he did what he had to do, and college was about partying, right? He wasn't going to be a writer or a poet, so it didn't really matter, right? But you know, and that's the way most people are. But unfortunately, if you continue your life misusing words, and then you become adult, most of the time it ain't going to matter. You're still going to be able to communicate effectively. But you got to remember that this was a treasure hunt. Forrest Fenn created the poem, and we had to solve the poem. Now it becomes important that you understand how everything is interacting with each other in the poem. You can't just read it once and not analyze it because your mind is going to fill things in, and it's probably going to fill it in incorrectly because of the fact that you've been abusing things your entire life. So the only way you're really going to learn to read the poem is to analyze it like this. But I'm just telling you now that, like Jack said, you know, I don't want to say that you need to be an English major in order to solve the poem, but understanding English plays an important role, right? What he meant by that is you don't really need to dive as deep as I did into here, but you need to look at every single word and determine the phrases and clauses that are being used. And then you need to determine how those phrases and clauses are working grammatically within there to provide a meaning to something, right? Because, like I said, you don't just say that a single word is a noun or a single word is a verb or an adjective. When a group of words forms a phrase or a clause, they work together as a grammatical unit. For example, an entire clause can be the subject of a sentence, or it can be used to provide more information to the verb, which is the case that we have in stanza 2. And everybody misreads that. Nowhere does that stanza tell you to go down into the canyon. It's part of the where clause. He's telling you to begin it. Where do I begin it? Well, you begin it where warm water, salt, and take it in the canyon down, not far, but too far to walk. The subject in that part, in the where clause, is warm waters. So the warm waters are what's doing the halt to take. It's not you that's doing that. It's the warm waters. And that is a fact. I'm not going to argue that because it'll be proven. Just ask anybody that knows grammar and they're going to agree with me. So anybody that's looking at the poem and saying, you know, I'm going to begin it where warm water salt, and then I'm going to go down. That's wrong right there. Okay. And that is the reason why you need to understand this. But you don't need to be a grammar expert to understand that that's a where clause, you know. But Forrest Fenn was hinting at the fact that you have to know these things. You have to analyze the poem. And the biggest hint right there was Forrest Fenn told you that knowing the words where warm water salt, okay, begin it where warm water salt, knowing those words alone, okay, begin it where warm water salt, and somewhere north of Santa Fe in the Rocky Mountains, and a map is not enough information to locate where warm water salt. So right there, he told you two things. The first reason why he told you that is because begin it where warm water salt, you're interrupting the sentence right in the middle of a clause, right in the middle of the where clause. So it's not enough information. Okay. In order to find out where warm water halt, you need to define Homer Brown because the Homer Brown contains the entire place where warm water salt and taken in the canyon down, not far, but too far to walk. All of that is occurring within the Homer Brown. You're already at the Homer Brown. Once you go to where you begin, where he says begin it, you're beginning it at the Homer Brown. Okay. But he's telling you that you can't walk to it. And the reason why he doesn't get specific about the distance of how far you're walking, because it doesn't matter how far. He's just telling you, look, you know, it's too far to walk. Okay, that's right there in your face. So even though that's where you're beginning it, begin does not mean move. Okay. He's telling you that's where everything begins. Where warm water salt and take it in the canyon down that far, but too far to walk. The Homer Brown is where everything begins. But what he's the first time he tells you to move, he says put in below the Homer Brown. So you know, he just got done telling you begin it, but where do I begin it? Well, I begin it, you know, where warm water salt and take it in the canyon down, not far, but too far to walk. But just put in below the Homer Brown. Right? Think about it that way. If I were talking to you on the street, right? So put in below all of that. It's basically what he's saying. So the first time you move anywhere in there is you're putting in below the Homer Brown. It is the wrong way to look at this poem is to think that you're going to go to a place where warm water salt, because Forrest Fenn already told you such a place don't exist. It's not enough information to locate the starting point. He told you that a million times. Okay. It's been proven. It's grammatically proven by what I showed you in my video. There is no other way to interpret that. If you're interpreting it any other way, you're messing with his poem. You're inserting commas where they shouldn't be, and you're misinterpreting everything in the poem. And you're also not listening to any of the advice Forrest Fenn gave you. So if you're have a solve that says that, I'm going to begin it where one word salt, and then I'm going to go down this canyon, and then I'm going to look for the home of Brown. You're wrong. Why would you look for the home of Brown if you're already there? It doesn't make any sense. Now, somebody once told Forrest or asked Forrest, they said, Forrest, if I know where the home of Brown is, can I reverse engineer where warm water salt? And Forrest laughed. And Forrest said, yeah, if you want to get your team to chip in for more gas money. What he was hinting at is that you're going to take an alternate means of transportation from where it begins to get down to where you put in, because you can't walk there. And he wants you to go to a place where you can walk. Okay. That's why he put the to walk in infinitive form. Remember how Forrest Fenn said that somebody asked him why are halt and walk like slant rhymes? Why don't they really rhyme? And he said, I was limited in my ability. That's what he meant. In other words, he's doing a dual purpose there. It's too far to walk. So that implies right there is, look, I want you to go to a place that you have to walk from, but that place is too far. Okay. Because like I said, to walk as an infinitive means in order to walk. That's how you interpret the to. Whenever you have a to infinitive, you can replace the word to with in order to. That's what it means. So when we say, to cease, all right, look quickly down my quest to cease. So it means in order to cease. That's what that means. Okay. To seek. I left my trove for all to seek. Okay. In order to seek. And it's important that you understand those types of things. But you would never know it if you didn't know that to was behaving as a particle, modifying the verb cease or whatever. Okay. And as a unit, okay, when you leave, think of that, think of putting quotes around to walk, to cease, and to seek. Put quotes around them and think about it like this. While you're within those quotes, cease or whatever is behaving as a verb, but only within those quotes, only within that phrase, that infinitive phrase. It's behaving that way. What that means is that you could stuff an adverb, for example, inside of there to modify the verb, because adverbs, as you know, don't modify nouns, they modify verbs. Now, once we leave those quotes, cease is no longer working as a verb. What is it working as? Well, it's working as one of three, as three different things. It's either working as an adjective, a noun, or an adverb. The whole phrase itself, okay, it's working as one of those three things. Well, how do you determine which one it's working as? By the context. Where is it being used? So in stanza 2, it's being used adverbially. So clearly, to walk is an adverb, and it's modifying too far. Too far to what? It's too far in order to walk. That's precisely what it means. And that's what I mean, that what Forrest Fenn meant when he said to analyze the poem, don't discount any words, and so on and so forth. That's why I did my grammar analysis video, because I wanted to do it. And also, I wanted to try to do it without mentioning a full sob, because I wanted to keep it so generic that anybody could use it for any sob, because that's the entire point. You could look at your sob and then look at that grammar analysis. For example, if your sob was saying, I start at warm water salt and then I walk down a canyon, you should immediately halt, oh, whoa, I'm wrong. Why am I going down the canyon? That's not what I'm supposed to do. And if your home of Brown is not part of where warm water salt, it's also wrong. So the benefit of keeping it generic is you can easily apply it to any solution to either confirm or deny that it's correct, right? That was the point. But you're going to run into a problem here, all right? The problem is that I showed you one stanza at a time, right? You need to keep in mind that you're reading a whole poem. You're reading a story, okay? So things are going to refer back to other stanzas or even forward in some cases, right? For example, the perfect example of it is the word it, right? It is referring to things in the past. That's really clear. So what I did is either if you're not good at keeping mental images, draw your imagination down on paper. Okay. So I don't care what you draw. You could call it WWH. Say, okay, um, this is where warm water salt, and he's saying, and where warm water salt is going to take it in the canyon down. So you're going to draw something coming away from where warm water salt and entering a canyon, okay? Because that's what he's describing there. Now that something is a creek, and we're able to prove that. But in order for me to prove that it's a creek, I'd have to, when I'm discussing stanza 2, I'd have to refer down to another stanza, and I didn't want to do that because that would only make sense if I was explaining a solution. Okay. So, but that's what you need to do. That's the next step. Once you know grammatically how the poem is functioning, you got to read it knowing how it's functioning and do precisely what it says. If you do that, it's going to end up telling you his secret where. And that's the key thing in this whole thing, because if you don't have the where clause figured out, where to start, where to begin it, you have nothing. And that's what Forrest said. That's what he meant, right? So anyway, I don't want this video to go on for hours. But my point is, that's why I didn't get into the deep analysis. What I told you is correct, but I didn't use, words like predicate adjective and relative pronoun. And, I didn't want to get into those specifics. I understand it, believe me. And that was all the work that I did behind the scenes in order to come up with what I showed you. It was a tremendous amount of work because I'm still not an English expert. And I would challenge you that everybody on the internet, none of them are experts. Okay. Some of them are going to have some areas that they're not that great in. But you only analyze the poem until you figure out what it's doing. And that's the important part. You don't need to go to dive in deep, okay, unless you're really going to be a linguist or, you really want to understand grammar. You want to get a master's degree or a PhD, in English. That's not what we're trying to accomplish here. All we're trying to do is understand the poem. We're not going to make things overcomplicated. We're not going to overcook it. You just need to understand it enough to be able to read it properly. That's all. So anyway, peace. Have a great week.